She was a decorated military officer, strong, fearless, and respected by every soldier under her command. But nothing prepared her for the moment she saw her mute daughters whispering to a janitor, a man she hadn't spoken to in 3 years, a man who once held their lives in his burning hands, a man who somehow made them feel safe enough to speak again. What she did next, no one saw it coming. Now, let's begin. Single dad, soldier, made the mute twins whisper. The moment her iron-willed mom broke in tears, the wind shifted as Colonel Alana Wolfe stepped out of her black government SUV, sharp heels striking the pavement with surgical precision. She wasn't supposed to be here, not at this hour, not at this school. Her base meeting had ended early, and out of some strange compulsion she hadn't yet named, she'd turned the wheel and ended up on this quiet, tree-lined street outside Bellevue Elementary. She stood still by the tall iron gate, her crisp uniform catching the last trace of sunlight. Her eyes, trained for battlefield assessments, scanned the courtyard with the same cold calculation she used in combat briefings, until they locked on an image she wasn't prepared for. Across the yard, beside the old oak tree near the music wing, sat her daughters. Emma on a worn wooden bench, Ellie beside her in her wheelchair. And there he was. A man, maybe late 30s, strong frame, faded janitor uniform, kneeling in the grass between them, sleeves rolled to the elbows, his hand holding something small and red, a wind chime. He wasn't speaking, just smiling gently as he let the little object dangle before the girls, its hollow metal tubes catching the wind and singing the softest of melodies. What happened next nearly brought Alana to her knees. Ellie, the twin who hadn't uttered a single word since the fire, leaned forward, placed a finger to the chime, and whispered something. A whisper, a sound. Then Emma, the quieter of the two since the move, did the same. Her lips moved, 2 words, maybe 3. And then she laughed. It was faint, like the ringing of distant church bells in snow, but it was there. Alana's breath caught in her throat. She clutched the black leather strap of her satchel like it might keep her from falling. Her daughters were speaking, not to her, not to their teachers, not to any therapist who cost her thousands per hour, but to a janitor. And then he did something even stranger. He hung the wind chime from a low branch of the oak tree, let it swing freely, and backed away just enough to let the girls have it to themselves. No applause, no coaxing, no praise, just presence. The kind that listens without trying to fix, the kind Alana Wolfe had forgotten how to give. She turned on instinct, heel clicking sharply against concrete. Her hand wiped at her cheek without permission. Moisture. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried since Kabul, since the court documents, since the custody agreement. She hadn't even cried the day Ellie stopped speaking. But now, here, in the middle of a quiet school afternoon, watching her own daughters whisper to a man in coveralls, her eyes betrayed her. Back inside the car, engine off, Alana sat rigid behind the wheel, her palms flat on her thighs, her breath shallow. She replayed the moment again and again, the man's posture, the way he knelt like a soldier disarming a bomb, the wind chime, that laugh, that whisper. She had been trained to resist interrogation, but this felt like her own soul sitting under cross-examination. Her phone buzzed. She didn't check it. Probably her aide. Probably a meeting reminder or another call from the therapist in D.C. who kept telling her that trauma in children could be reversed, if only they were more expressive. She chuckled bitterly. Expressive. What would they say now if they knew her mute child had spoken not with years of therapy, but with a janitor and a piece of hanging metal in the breeze? She opened the car door and stepped back out. The wind chime still rang, faint, warm, like a lullaby long forgotten. Alana crossed the yard. Her body moved like it had in combat, tight shoulders, deliberate steps, but her heart was beating too fast for any standard patrol. The girls had left. So had the man. Only the wind chime remained. She stood before it, arms at her sides. The branch above creaked. The tubes clicked gently against one another. She looked up. The wind had picked up, but the sound didn't startle her. It slowed her down, calmed her in a way she hadn't let herself feel in years. Then she noticed something. One of the chime's tubes had a name etched faintly into it. A first name. Hayden. No last name. No title. Just Hayden. The bell clinked once more, and with it came a memory. Years ago, during her final deployment, a chaplain had once said, "Sometimes, healing doesn't come from answers. It comes from someone who stays long enough to hear the silence." At the time, she hadn't understood it. She had brushed it off. But now, watching a forgotten wind chime swing beneath a schoolyard tree, she finally did. The next day, she filed for a schedule adjustment. She didn't explain why. She didn't owe anyone that. All she knew was this. Her daughters had whispered, and she hadn't been the one they whispered to. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, that could change. And for the first time in 3 years, Colonel Alana Wolfe decided she didn't need orders to show up. She just needed to learn how to listen. Hayden Cole arrived at Bellevue Elementary precisely at 6:42 a.m., as he did every morning, 5 days a week, rain or shine. He parked his aging Dodge pickup in the far corner of the lot, the same spot he had claimed since the first day he was hired. There were no assigned spaces for janitorial staff, but Hayden liked routine. He sat for a minute before stepping out, hands resting on the steering wheel. He looked down at his palms, calloused, cracked in the corners, fingers marked by the memory of fire, metal, and too many tools held too tightly for too long. These were not the hands of a hero. Not anymore. Inside the small custodial room behind the cafeteria, he exchanged his jacket for his work apron, faded navy canvas, frayed at the edges. Like him, it had held together longer than expected. He filled the mop bucket, checked the boiler pressure, flipped the breaker on the hallway lights, and began his quiet patrol through the school's still sleeping corridors. There was comfort in these early hours, before laughter and spilled juice boxes, before sticky fingers on windows and forgotten coats. Here, in the silence, he felt most like himself. And in truth, the silence didn't bother him. He'd learned to live inside it. Hayden had been a field medic and rescue specialist in Afghanistan. 12 years, 3 tours, 1 Silver Star, 2 concussions, countless lives saved. But none of that followed him here. Here, he was the man with the mop, the guy who changed filters and fixed clogged toilets, the one who blended in with bleach fumes and wore old boots that squeaked in gym hallways. And that's exactly how he wanted it. The war hadn't broken him, not in the way people expected. He returned intact, at least physically. But 2 years after his discharge, tragedy struck far closer to home. A phone call on a Sunday afternoon. Smoke, screaming, a house engulfed before the fire department even arrived. He got there too late. Emma and Ellie had survived. Barely. Hayden had pulled them from the second-floor hallway himself, lungs scorched, arms burning. His wife, Marla, was gone. Just like that. Ellie lost the ability to walk. Emma hadn't spoken for 2 weeks. And then, slowly, only whispered, "Ellie?" She didn't speak at all. Doctors called it trauma-induced mutism. Therapists said it would take time. Hayden didn't argue. He didn't fight. He just stayed. No speeches, no explanations, just presence. Each morning he made pancakes. Ellie liked strawberries. Emma preferred banana slices. Each afternoon, he picked them up from school. Each night, he told the same bedtime story about a forest and a brave fox who never ran away, no matter what chased him. He didn't try to heal them. That wasn't his job. He was their anchor, not their cure. At school, he became a fixture, not remarkable, not important, but always there. And then, one day last fall, he saw Ellie watching a little girl play with a wind chime near the music room window. Her eyes lit up. It was the first time he'd seen wonder in them since before the fire. That weekend, he rummaged through his garage until he found it. A small red wind chime, dusty but intact. It had belonged to Marla. She used to hang it on the back porch every spring. Said it was the only sound that felt like breathing. Hayden cleaned it carefully, replaced the cracked string with fishing line, and brought it to school. Not as a gift, just as a presence. He hung it on a low branch near the oak tree and didn't say a word. The girls noticed, sat near it, touched it. Then, days later, Emma whispered something, then laughed. The sound didn't echo, didn't bounce off walls like applause. But for Hayden, it was the loudest sound in the world. He never asked what she said. He didn't need to. Later that day, he wiped his hands on his apron and walked down the hall. A teacher passed by, didn't notice him, didn't nod. Good. He liked being invisible. It made it easier to see what others missed. At lunch, he passed the music room and paused, just for a second. Inside, the piano sat silent, its keys untouched. But he could almost hear Marla's hands on them, playing softly while the girls danced barefoot in the living room. He shook the memory away. Down the hall, a student dropped his lunch tray. Hayden crouched immediately, helping pick up applesauce and scattered carrots. The boy said nothing, just looked embarrassed. Hayden offered a wink. Even astronauts spill things, he said. The boy blinked, then smiled. Another win. Small, quiet, but real. After school, he waited beneath the oak tree, not for thanks, not for recognition, just for a moment. And when Emma and Ellie walked out, Ellie's wheelchair rolling slowly over the uneven path, he held the wind chime in one hand and tapped it gently. The chime rang once. Ellie looked at it, then at him. She didn't speak, but her eyes did. So he nodded. Just once. He didn't need applause, just presence. That night, after the girls were asleep, Hayden sat on the porch, the same wind chime hanging from the beam above. It rang in the dark, soft, steady, like a promise he never spoke aloud. He'd been a soldier, a rescuer, a husband, and now, quietly, a janitor. But the title he held closest was father, and to him, that was enough. Colonel Alana Wolfe didn't believe in ghosts, at least not the kind that rattled chains and whispered in old houses. But she did believe in hauntings, the kind that showed up on quiet afternoons, the kind that wore pigtails and wheelchairs and little blue backpacks. For 3 years, she'd convinced herself that distance was duty, that letting Hayden take full custody was the right call. Temporary, necessary. Her deployments had been non-stop, and when the fire took Marla, she had told herself she was doing the children a favor by staying out of the way. But now, as she signed her name at the front desk and clicked on a visitor badge that read, Alana Wolfe, Parent, her fingers trembled ever so slightly. The front office smelled like lemon disinfectant and nostalgia. A secretary with tired eyes looked up from a clipboard. Room 2C, she said. Music hour just started. Alana nodded. Her heels clicked once, then again, down the linoleum hall. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her back ramrod straight, her expression unreadable. She knew discipline. She knew warfare. She didn't know how to knock on the classroom door without falling apart. Peering through the narrow glass window, she saw them. Emma, sitting cross-legged on a reading mat. Ellie in a wheelchair, close by, and Hayden, on one knee beside them, holding something in his palm. A red wind chime. Emma touched it gently. Ellie reached forward and tapped it once. The chime sang a low, sweet note. Then came the moment. Emma leaned forward and whispered, "See you tomorrow." The words were soft, but Alana felt them like a shout, like a verdict. Hayden smiled, not surprised, not proud, just steady, present. The girls gathered their things. Ellie's chair spun carefully as Hayden helped her position her backpack over the handles. Emma reached for his hand, and he took it with a quiet grace Alana hadn't seen in a man since her early days in command. Her throat tightened. She opened the door. Hayden turned. "Colonel Wolfe," he said quietly. Not startled, not tense, just respectful. "Hayden," she replied, her voice clipped. She looked at Emma, who froze mid-step. "Hi, sweetheart." Emma gave a half-smile, polite, hesitant. "Hi." Ellie didn't speak, just looked up with wide, unreadable eyes. Alana squatted slowly, aligning herself with Ellie's gaze. "May I walk with you two for a moment?" Hayden stood aside. The girls didn't object. That was something. They moved down the hallway, Alana pushing Ellie's chair now, Emma walking silently at her side. Hayden followed at a respectful distance. Outside, the afternoon sun was soft, and the wind chime on the old oak tree whispered its familiar tune. Alana stopped near the bench. She sat beside Emma. Ellie stayed in her chair, wheels facing forward. "I saw you in class," Alana began. "You were happy." Emma nodded. "He lets us sit close to the music." "He?" "Mr. Hayden." Alana pressed her lips together. "Do you remember when you used to sit on my lap during piano practice?" Emma shrugged. That was before. Silence fell. Ellie shifted in her seat. Alana turned to her. "Ellie, I'd love to hear you talk to me." The little girl looked away. "I know I've been gone," Alana added, "and that's my fault. I thought I was making the right decision." Hayden stepped closer. "May I?" Alana hesitated, then nodded. He crouched next to Ellie, not saying a word, just waited. Let the wind chime sing again. Ellie touched his shoulder lightly, then reached into her pocket. A crumpled drawing. She handed it to him. He opened it. 3 stick figures, 2 girls and a tall man, with a red wind chime above their heads. No mother. Alana saw it. Her breath caught. "She doesn't hate you," Hayden said softly. "She just doesn't know if you'll stay." Alana blinked. "You think I'm running away again?" He shook his head. "I think they've been waiting 3 years to believe you won't." The wind picked up. Leaves scattered across the courtyard. Ellie looked up. Emma reached over, took Alana's hand, and whispered, "Don't leave yet." Alana couldn't speak. Her chest rose, then fell, then rose again. She looked at Hayden, steady, grounded, calloused hands tucked into his back pockets. "You built this," she said. "I showed up," he replied. "Every day, that's all." Alana stood. The girls stood with her. "May I come back tomorrow?" she asked. Emma nodded. Ellie, after a moment, nodded too. Hayden didn't smile. He just exhaled. And for the first time since the fire, Alana Wolfe walked away from her daughters with the sense that she had finally taken the first step toward being a mother again. Not in uniform. Not in command. Just as herself, Hayden Cole rarely dreamed. But when he did, it was always the same dream. Smoke. Thick, black smoke curling beneath the door. The sound of glass shattering upstairs. Ellie's cries. Then silence. And Marla's voice calling his name, just once. He woke up every time before the roof collapsed, always right before that moment. always with sweat soaking his collar and guilt pressing against his ribs like body armor he could never remove. That night had never left him. Not truly. It was stitched into his skin like invisible thread. Tight, binding, unforgiving. It had been a Tuesday, late September. He'd just returned from a temporary deployment to assist FEMA after a flash flood in Kentucky, just 72 hours away. He left on a Sunday. Marla kissed him goodbye on the porch, barefoot, hair in a messy bun, smiling with a cup of coffee in hand. "I'll see you Tuesday night," she said. "We'll be fine." He pulled into the driveway at 11:43 p.m. on that Tuesday. The sky above their small-town home was glowing orange. At first, he thought it was the streetlight catching fog. But then he saw the flames licking the side of the house. The front window exploded. His brain kicked into rescue mode. He didn't think. He ran. He kicked the door in, lungs bracing against the smoke. He yelled for them, eyes searching through the thick black veil. The girl's room was upstairs. 2 steps at a time, he climbed the stairs as the walls hissed and cracked. He found them in the hallway, Ellie curled in a ball, coughing, Emma dragging her sister by the sleeve. He scooped them up, one under each arm. Ran. The stairs groaned beneath his weight. A beam cracked and fell. Flames snapped at his heels. They burst onto the lawn just as the second-floor windows blew out. The neighbors screamed. Sirens wailed. He laid the girls gently on the grass. Then he turned back, toward the door, toward Marla. He got 6 feet before 2 firefighters grabbed him. "She's not in there," he roared. "She was in the kitchen." But it was too late. They held him as the house collapsed, held him as his knees gave out, held him as he screamed her name until his throat bled. Marla didn't make it out. And Hayden never went back in uniform again. He could save others, not his own. After the funeral, people called him a hero. Reporters called. A senator sent a letter. But all Hayden could think was, "I was too late by 11 minutes. He didn't want a medal. He didn't want applause. He just wanted his girls to look at him one day and not see a man who failed their mother." And so, every day since, he built a rhythm, a ritual, a penance, morning pancakes, evening books, routine like prayer. He never told them the full story, never said what it was like to carry their small, burning bodies through a wall of fire, never said how he could still feel Ellie's tiny fingers gripping his shirt. He just stayed. Day after day, once a therapist had asked him, "What are you hoping to achieve with all this routine?" Hayden had shrugged. "Redemption," she probed. "No," he answered quietly. "Just permission." "Permission for what?" "To believe they'll forgive me," he'd said. One day. Forgiveness didn't need to be a sentence. It didn't even need to be a word. It could be a moment, a whisper, a touch. Just one. That's all he ever asked. Back in the present, Hayden sat on the back steps of the school, watching the red wind chimes swing in the late afternoon light. The girls were with Alana today. First time in years they'd go home in their mother's car. He'd packed their bags with extra care. Emma's stuffed lion, Ellie's sketchbook, 2 sandwiches, cut diagonally, just how they liked them. He didn't expect thanks. But when Emma turned at the car door, gave him a small wave and whispered, "See you tomorrow," it was enough. He touched the top of the wind chime. The tube sang quietly, not loudly, not proudly, just enough. In that sound was a memory and a hope that one day Ellie would look him in the eyes and put her hand on his. And maybe then he'd feel what it was like to breathe again without guilt in his lungs. He didn't need to be called a good father. He didn't need to be told he was strong. He just needed that one moment when silence turned into grace and the past finally let go, Hayden was wiping down the cafeteria tables when Principal Margaret Fielding asked to see him in her office. "Now?" he asked, gently stacking the last of the trays. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just a quick chat." He nodded, rinsed his rag at the sink, and followed her down the corridor, past rows of hand-painted murals, past the trophy case with dusty plaques, past children's laughter muffled behind classroom doors. Doors he never stepped into unless something needed fixing. Principal Fielding's office was tidy, precise. The air smelled of cinnamon tea and polished wood. On the desk, a framed photo of her grandchildren in Halloween costumes. Hayden had once repaired the frame when it cracked. "Please," she gestured, "have a seat." He did. She folded her hands, cleared her throat. "I want to start by saying, everyone here knows you've been dependable. Kind. You've never caused trouble. In fact, quite the opposite." Hayden said nothing, but she continued, her tone tightening. "We received a formal concern from a faculty member." Hayden's posture didn't change. His eyes, however, sharpened. "Go on," he said. "It's been noted that you spend significant time with two particular students, Emma and Ellie Wolfe." Hayden's brow furrowed. "They're my daughters." "They're your foster daughters," she corrected gently. "Temporarily under your care, as per emergency custody arrangements following the tragedy. But biologically, they're Colonel Wolfe's." His voice dropped to a calm, low register. "With her consent, I've raised them since they were 3. I understand. But the concern isn't about biology. It's about boundaries." She reached for a folder. "The teacher who submitted the report believes your interactions, while not inappropriate per se, might appear overly familiar to outsiders." "Overly familiar," he repeated, like the words tasted foreign. "You hold their hands. You kneel close. You're often seen on the playground during non-maintenance hours." "I use my break time to be near them," he said simply, "because it helps." Margaret hesitated. "You've never hidden your presence, Hayden. That's not the issue. But some staff feel it sends the wrong message, that it blurs the line between employee and caregiver." His hands tightened in his lap. "So what are you saying?" he asked, voice still composed. "You want me to stop being a father just because I mop the floors?" She flinched. "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." There was a long silence. She sighed. "The district is reviewing all cases involving direct student-employee relationships, especially where personal attachments exist. It's not just about you." "No," he said, "but it's me being questioned." Before she could reply, a knock on the door interrupted them. It was Colonel Alana Wolfe. She stepped in, face unreadable as ever. "Sorry," she said, glancing between them. "Margaret called me in." Hayden stood slowly. Alana gave a small nod to him, formal but not cold. "Would you mind waiting outside for a moment?" Principal Fielding asked him. He didn't reply, just stepped into the hallway, shutting the door softly behind him. Inside the office, Alana took the chair Hayden had vacated. Margaret leaned forward. "Colonel, I assume you've been briefed." "Somewhat," Alana replied. "Is there any actual evidence of misconduct?" "No, but the concern was raised by a respected member of our faculty. Her worry is about optics." "Optics?" Alana echoed flatly. "Do you know what the optics of abandonment look like?" Margaret blinked. "I left my daughters for 3 years," Alana continued, voice steady. "Hayden raised them through trauma, recovery, therapy, and sleepless nights. He's the reason my daughters can smile, the reason one of them can whisper again." Margaret shifted. "No one's questioning his intentions. Then what exactly is being questioned?" Alana asked. "Because from where I sit, it sounds a lot like we're punishing a man for loving children who aren't genetically his. for working a blue-collar job, for not fitting the expected mold. The principal opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I understand caution," Alana said. "But if this school turns its back on the one man who's shown nothing but kindness and integrity, then maybe the problem isn't with him." Outside the office, Hayden sat on the bench near the trophy case, staring at his boots. A few students passed. One waved. He didn't see it. When the door opened, Alana stepped out. He stood. "Well?" She looked at him for a moment, longer than usual. "There's going to be a review," she said. "Nothing formal yet. But they're concerned." He nodded once. "You agree with them?" "I did. For about 10 seconds." He looked away. "But then I remembered Emma's laugh when you push her on the swings," she added softly, "and how Ellie touches your sleeve when she's scared." She met his eyes. "You don't need my defense. But you have it." He blinked. "Why?" "Because for the first time in a long time, I saw someone love my children without needing to prove anything." That evening, whispers spread among staff and parents. Some supported the concern. "Inappropriate closeness," they murmured. Others pushed back. "He saved those girls," they insisted. Lines were drawn, emails sent. The community buzzed, and while the debate raged, Hayden did what he always did. He showed up, mopped the floors, packed the girls' lunches, walked them to class, never raised his voice, never defended himself. But each afternoon, beneath the oak tree, he touched the red wind chime. It rang quietly. Not a protest. Not a plea. Just a reminder. Some sounds don't need to shout to be true. The music room was quiet, just the soft hum of air conditioning and the faint scent of crayons clinging to the air. It was late Friday afternoon. The halls were nearly empty. Alana hadn't planned to stay. She had only stopped by to drop off a forgotten lunchbox, nothing more. But something, intuition perhaps, nudged her feet toward room 2C. The door was ajar. Inside, the girls weren't there. But on the far wall, beneath the whiteboard, and just above the old piano, something new had appeared. A drawing, done in crayon, taped gently, but proud, like a mural waiting to be seen. Alana stepped closer. 3 figures, one tall, with messy hair and a brown shirt, clearly Hayden. 2 smaller girls stood on either side, arms outstretched. Behind them was a piano, colored with love and clumsy fingers. And next to it, another figure, blonde hair and a grey coat, not detailed like the others, but clearly her. Mother. Alana's breath caught. In the bottom right corner, written in shaky block letters, were the words, "You were here. We remember." Her hand trembled as she reached out, almost touching the crayon lines. "You found it," a soft voice said behind her. She turned. Emma stood in the doorway. Ellie sat quietly in her chair beside her, holding a box of broken crayons. "I didn't know you girls stayed after school today," Alana said, clearing her throat. "We wanted to finish it," Emma replied, "before you left again." Alana felt the sting behind her eyes. "I wasn't planning to leave." Emma looked down. "You always say that." There was no anger in her voice, just the hollow kind of honesty children speak when they've stopped expecting anything to change. Alana crouched to their level. "May I sit with you two for a bit?" They nodded. She sat on the floor, legs crossed. A silence stretched out, a silence that wasn't heavy this time, but waiting. Ellie handed her a broken, peach-colored crayon. "You can draw too," she whispered. It was the first time Alana had ever heard her voice up close. She blinked in surprise, but said nothing, just smiled and took the crayon. "Who drew the piano?" Alana asked. "I did," Emma said. "You remembered how it looks?" Emma nodded. "It's from the old house. Daddy used to play sometimes. You played more." Alana's breath hitched. "Yes," she whispered. "I did." A flash of memory came uninvited, her fingers gliding over ivory keys, while Marla hummed and Hayden whistled from the kitchen. Emma spinning in circles, Ellie banging on the low octaves like it was her drum set. "That was a long time ago," Alana said. Emma looked at her, and for the first time in 3 years, she spoke a full sentence. "She played when you were gone." Alana froze. The words hit like a storm, gentle in tone, but searing in truth. Ellie reached out and placed her hand on her mother's knee, a silent echo of the same message. Alana felt her defenses crumble. She had spent 3 years telling herself the girls had gone silent because of trauma, because of smoke and loss, because of what they'd seen that night. But now, it was so clear. Emma hadn't stopped speaking because of what happened. She'd stopped because of what didn't. Alana wasn't there, not after the fire, not when the nightmares came, not when Ellie needed her mother to help her adjust to wheels instead of legs, not when Hayden carried them both, day after day, with that quiet, unwavering steadiness. Emma didn't lose her voice. She chose not to use it for the one who left. "I missed a lot," Alana whispered. The girls didn't nod, didn't reassure. They just sat with her. And that honesty was a kind of mercy. Alana reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of music, an old composition from years ago, before she deployed for her final tour. It was the lullaby she used to hum to them when they were babies. She smoothed it on the floor in front of them. Emma stared, then pointed. "That's the one you played with one hand and held me with the other." Alana smiled, eyes misty. "Yes, you were very small. You drooled all over my collar." Emma giggled, and in that tiny sound was something miraculous, more powerful than piano keys or medals or command ranks. It was forgiveness, a little imperfect, a little hesitant, but real. Alana picked up the peach crayon again and drew a little sun above the family. Then, beside it, a wind chime. Emma saw it. "That's Daddy's." "Yes," Alana said. "It's part of the song now." That night, as the janitor locked up and flicked off the last hallway light, he passed the music room. He paused, noticing something new on the wall. He stepped inside. There, above the drawing, was one more phrase, written in a child's uneven hand. "You can still be part of the song." Hayden smiled. Then quietly, reverently, he touched the wind chime outside the window. It rang once. Soft, gentle, like the first note in a healing song. The sky above the town was soft and lavender, the last light of day bleeding into shadow. Alana Wolfe stood on the sidewalk outside Hayden's house, unsure if her legs were still hers. She had parked 4 houses down. Habit, probably. Some part of her still moved like a soldier in unfamiliar terrain. Quiet, measured, guarded. But tonight wasn't about strategy. It was about surrender. She looked at the porch. The wood had been mended, but not painted. The wind chime swayed gently from the awning, catching the breeze in silver sighs. She could see the light in the living room window, warm and low, casting silhouettes against the curtains. 3 shadows. 1 tall, 2 small. She raised her hand to knock, hesitated, then knocked anyway. The door opened faster than she expected. Hayden. No apron this time. Just a grey t-shirt, sleeves rolled, calloused hand still faintly smudged with oil from fixing the sink. His eyes locked with hers. He didn't ask what she was doing there. He didn't offer a joke to break the tension. He just waited. Alana swallowed. "Can I just be here?" She didn't say sorry, not yet. She didn't know how. But Hayden's eyes softened. He stepped aside. "Yeah." She walked in, The house smelled like peanut butter and pencil shavings. A pot of tea steamed quietly on the stove. A single lamp illuminated the floor, where Emma and Ellie sat cross-legged with coloring books spread out between them. The girls looked up. Emma gave a small smile. Ellie's eyes widened. Hayden motioned toward the floor. "We're working on superheroes tonight." Alana knelt beside them. Slowly. Her knees weren't used to floors anymore. She didn't say a word. Just sat. Emma handed her a blue crayon. "You can color the cape." Alana took it, carefully, like it might shatter. For 10 minutes, no one spoke. The wind chime outside whispered. The tea bubbled gently. Ellie leaned her elbow on Hayden's knee, focused on her drawing. Emma hummed a song under her breath. Alana didn't know the melody, but it sounded like something learned by heart. And then, so soft it almost wasn't there, Ellie spoke. "I want her to stay." The room stilled. Emma looked up. Hayden froze, the pencil in his hand mid-stroke. Alana blinked, slowly turned. Ellie was staring at her, eyes wide but calm. "I want her to stay," the little girl repeated, this time louder, a whisper rising into something braver. Alana felt her breath catch in her throat, not because her daughter had spoken, not just because the silence was broken after 3 years, but because the words weren't about her voice. They were about grace. They were a bridge, not an invitation. A forgiveness. Alana's lips trembled. She pressed her palm to her chest, as if her ribs might split open from the pressure inside. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, she cried. Not the silent tears she allowed in the dark, not the strategic tears at a ceremony. She wept. Right there on the living room floor, beside her daughters and the man she had both trusted and doubted. She wept for every moment missed, every lullaby left unsung, every scraped knee she hadn't kissed. Emma scooted closer, rested her head on Alana's shoulder. Hayden didn't speak. He didn't reach for her. He just stayed still. Present. Let her fall apart without shame. And somehow, that made it safe. After a while, the tears slowed. Ellie passed her a crayon. It was broken and short, peach-colored. "You can draw the sun," she said softly. Alana nodded. Her voice barely returned. "I'd like that." And she did. Not perfectly, not with clean lines or steady hands. But she drew it. Right there in the corner of the page, beside the 3 figures and the wind chime. A little sun. Warm. Honest. Real. Later, after the girls had gone to bed, Alana stood by the door, jacket folded over her arm. "Thank you," she said. Hayden leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "For what?" "For not turning me away." He gave a tired smile. "You asked to be here, that was enough." She hesitated. "I know I don't get to erase the years I was gone," she said. "But I want to earn my way back in, even if it's slow. Even if it's just Tuesday night dinners and sitting on the floor with crayons." Hayden looked at her for a long moment. "You were always part of them, Alana," he said. "Even when they didn't say it." She blinked hard. "Next Tuesday," she asked, "can I come again?" He nodded. "We're doing dragons next week, just so you know. I'll bring the glitter crayons." "Dangerous move," he said, smiling. She smiled back, then stepped out into the night. The wind chimes sang behind her, and for the first time she'd listened, not as a soldier, not as a woman weighed down by guilt, but as a mother learning how to return. One whisper, one crayon, one evening at a time. The attic was quiet. Dust swirled in the golden shaft of light slipping through the cracked window. Hayden hadn't been up here in years, not since they'd moved to this smaller rental after the fire. Most of the boxes remained sealed, their tape yellowed and brittle. He moved slowly, careful not to stir up too much dust. He wasn't sure what made him come up here. Maybe it was Ellie's soft whisper the night before, or the way Alana had wiped her cheeks without shame. Or maybe it was just time. Time to remember. Time to let memory stop being a weight and start becoming a bridge. He found it in the third box from the left, wrapped in an old scarf. Between a cracked photo frame and a bundle of children's drawings lay the music box. Small, wooden, etched with vines and tiny silver birds. He held it in his palm like something sacred. Marla's music box. He remembered giving it to her on their 4th anniversary, just before his first overseas tour. She'd laughed and called it old-fashioned, then cradled it like a newborn. Every night while he was gone, she would wind it and let the soft melody drift through the girl's bedroom. Hayden turned the tiny key on its back and let it go. The tune was slower now. Some of the notes stuck. The mechanism wheezed with age. But the melody, Edelweiss from The Sound of Music, was still there. Still beautiful. He exhaled and went downstairs. That evening, the living room was quieter than usual. The TV was off. Crayons were tucked away. Alana sat with Emma and Ellie at the piano bench. Hayden entered without saying a word. They looked up. "I found something," he said. He held out the music box. Emma gasped. "Is that Mommy's?" He nodded. "Do you remember it?" Ellie reached out and gently touched the lid. She played it every night, after the stories. Alana took it next, cradling it carefully. "I remember this." She looked at Hayden, her voice soft. "You gave it to her before your first deployment. She told me once she never wound it until you left." Hayden smiled faintly. She used to say music kept her from unraveling. He walked over to the upright piano and placed the music box gently on top of it. "I was thinking," he said, "maybe we could try playing it together." Alana blinked. "The song?" He nodded. "Even if we get the notes wrong, even if it's slow." Emma stood on the bench and patted the seat between them. "We can all fit." Ellie giggled. "Barely." Hayden chuckled and sat. Alana joined beside him. The girls squeezed in, Emma on her mom's lap, Ellie beside her dad. The keys stretched before them. Some yellowed, one chipped, all waiting. Emma took her mother's hand and placed it on the keys. Ellie reached up, did the same with Hayden's. Then both girls pressed a few notes, tentative, off-key. Hayden looked at Alana. "Left hand, or right?" "Both," she said. "Eventually." He nodded. They began slowly. Alana picked out the melody with halting grace. Hayden followed, unsure but steady. Emma added harmony, simple thirds. Ellie listened. Her fingers hovered above the keys but didn't press down. She just watched, absorbed. The tune faltered once. Hayden lost a note. Then Alana missed a chord. But no one stopped. They laughed, restarted, found their rhythm. And somewhere in that imperfect concert, something happened. Ellie placed her hands on the keys, pressed a note, then another. And together, for the first time in forever, the family created music. Not flawless, not grand, but whole. The melody of Edelweiss filled the room, soft, unsure, full of breath and bravery. As the final note faded, no one moved. Even the wind chime outside the window was silent, as if the world was listening. Then Emma whispered, "That sounded like Mommy." Hayden felt his chest twist. Alana reached over and touched his arm. "She would have been proud," she said. He nodded. "I think," Ellie said quietly, "we should play it every week." "Every Tuesday?" Alana asked. Emma grinned. "Music Tuesday." Hayden chuckled. "Better than Taco Tuesday." The girls laughed. And in that room, where fire had once taken everything, something new had begun. Something built not on ashes, but on echoes. On hands that reached instead of retreated. On voices. Some knew, some returned, that chose to be heard. Alana picked up the music box, wound it again, and placed it back on the piano. As it played softly, she leaned her head on Hayden's shoulder. No words, no promises, just presence and hope. In the quiet between notes, they weren't grieving anymore. They were building. Together, the community center auditorium smelled faintly of burnt coffee and freshly printed paper. Rows of metal folding chairs creaked under the weight of concern, tension, and whispered speculation. The weekly parent board meeting had never drawn this many attendees. But tonight wasn't just about bake sales or budget cuts. Tonight was about Hayden Cole. At the front of the room, a folding table had been dressed up to feel official. Placards, microphones, a pitcher of lukewarm water. Principal Danner sat in the middle, her fingers steepled beneath her chin, eyes darting to the door every few seconds. Hayden had entered 10 minutes earlier, silent and alone. He took a seat in the far back, near the exit, his Navy janitor uniform still stained from a leaky pipe he'd fixed after lunch. He hadn't spoken to anyone. He wasn't there to defend himself. He was there because he owed it to the girls, to Ellie, to Emma, and maybe, in some quiet, conflicted part of himself, to Alana. The murmurs quieted when the door opened again. Colonel Alana Wolfe stepped inside. She was in full dress uniform, not to intimidate, not to show rank, but because sometimes, when your voice is still learning how to speak from the heart, the uniform reminds you that your words matter. She didn't walk in like a mother. She walked in like a reckoning. She spotted Hayden in the back, gave a subtle nod, then took a seat near the front. Principal Danner cleared her throat into the mic. "Good evening. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We're here tonight to address a matter brought forward by a concerned faculty member regarding boundaries between school staff and students." She looked around, carefully neutral. "Specifically, the role of Mr. Hayden Cole, our custodial supervisor, and his relationship with students Emma and Ellie Wolfe." The name echoed. People shifted. A woman in the third row raised her hand. "My concern," she said, voice sharp with propriety, "is that we're blurring lines. I've seen him hug those girls, sit with them at lunch. That's not standard janitorial behavior." A few heads nodded. Another father chimed in. "My son said he saw Mr. Cole pushing one of the twins in her wheelchair during recess. Shouldn't that be the job of a certified aide?" A wave of polite judgment rippled through the room. Hayden remained still. His hands were folded, his shoulders square. But inside, the old shame crawled up his spine like fire through drywall. Principal Danner glanced toward Alana. "Colonel Wolfe, as the mother of the children in question, would you like to respond?" Alana rose. Slowly. She didn't approach the podium. She didn't need to. Her voice carried from where she stood. "I will." The room hushed. She scanned the faces before her, parents she'd never met, teachers who had only seen her on paperwork. "My daughters were 2.5 when their home burned down, when their mother died." Silence deepened. Hayden Cole, Mr. Cole, ran into that burning house and carried both girls out with his own hands. He lost everything else in that fire. She paused. Let the words settle. Since then, he has raised them, fed them, bathed them, listened to them scream through night terrors, and held them when no one else could. When her voice caught, she breathed. When I chose duty over motherhood, he never made me the villain. He never even blamed me. He just stayed. A chair creaked. Someone coughed, but no one interrupted. "And now," she continued, "you sit here discussing whether he's too close to the girls, whether a janitor should be allowed to care." Her eyes sharpened. "Well, let me ask you this. Where were you when Ellie didn't speak for 3 years? when Emma wouldn't sleep unless someone was humming Edelweiss beside her bed. Where were your rules then? She stepped forward, slow and deliberate. That man held my daughters when I couldn't. She let the words hang. Then she looked directly at the faculty member who had made the complaint. And you want to remove him for being present when I wasn't? The room stilled, the kind of stillness that comes after truth is spoken, too bare, too real to deny. Principal Danner swallowed. She removed her glasses. Colonel Wolfe, thank you. Alana nodded and sat down, her shoulders rigid. Her hand shook slightly in her lap, though her face remained composed. Across the room, someone stood. An older woman, Mrs. Monroe, the art teacher. I teach both girls, she said. I've seen them change this year, laugh again, create again. That didn't happen because of therapy alone. It happened because Mr. Cole treated them like more than just students. He treated them like they mattered. A man in the second row stood too. My son said Mr. Cole taught him how to patch a bicycle tire after school, he said. It was the first time he ever came home talking about an adult with respect. Voices began to murmur again, but now the tone was different, warmer, supportive. Hayden didn't move, he didn't cry, but his jaw clenched just once, as if to hold back something too tender for this moment. Principal Danner raised her hands. I believe the board has heard enough to make a decision. Mr. Cole will retain his position, and I strongly encourage us all to reconsider what it truly means to serve a child's needs. Applause broke out, not thunderous, but steady, earned. Hayden met Alana's eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he let himself exhale. Outside, under the soft glow of the parking lot lights, Alana caught up to him. You didn't say a word, she said. He shrugged. Didn't have to. She smiled. Still, she added, you might have warned me you were going to let me do all the crying. He smirked. Didn't want to steal your thunder. She rolled her eyes, but her hand brushed his arm. And in that touch, there was something more. Something not yet spoken, but deeply understood. The school gymnasium was lit with soft strings of light, borrowed from last year's winter dance, and a few well-placed spotlights. Folding chairs filled the space, a mix of proud parents, sleepy siblings, and teachers in their best weekend cardigans. A hand-painted banner stretched above the stage, Spring Showcase, Finding Our Voice. Backstage, Ellie gripped Emma's hand. You sure? She whispered. Emma nodded. Only if you are. I think so, Ellie replied, her voice almost inaudible. Hayden crouched beside them, adjusting Ellie's pink bow. You don't have to do this, he said gently. Not for anyone. Ellie looked up at him. But I want to. Hayden smiled. Then I'll be right here. On the other side of the curtain, Alana stood near the foot of the stage, arms crossed. Not in tension, but in prayer. She was in plain clothes for once. Soft sweater, slacks, her hair down. Nothing to shield her, nothing to hide behind. Her heart thudded, not from fear, but from something unfamiliar and fragile. Hope. The principal approached the microphone. Our next performance is by two very special young ladies, she said, glancing warmly toward Alana and Hayden. They requested no music, no accompaniment, just their own way of being heard. A murmur of curiosity ran through the crowd. The curtains parted slowly. Emma wheeled Ellie out, side by side, to the center of the stage. A single mic stood between them. Behind them sat the piano, closed and untouched. There was no music stand, no sheet music, no lyrics projected on the wall. Just two small girls, a microphone, and the weight of everything they'd carried. Emma leaned forward first. Her mouth moved slowly, deliberately. A single note. No sound came through the mic, just a breathy whisper, so soft it was more intention than voice. Then Ellie followed. Another note. A whisper. Barely audible. Together they continued, whispering notes into the microphone one by one. Heads leaned together like co-conspirators in a secret only the soul could hear. No melody could be discerned, yet everyone felt something. A shift, a current in the room. It was as if the silence itself had shape, fragile, trembling, sacred. Alana's breath caught in her throat. The gymnasium was silent. Even the restless children had stilled. Teachers sat forward, hands clasped. Parents blinked, unsure why their eyes were welling. No one could understand what the girls were doing, but everyone understood what it meant. Hayden watched from the side, arms crossed loosely over his chest, his head bowed, not in shame, but in reverence. Each whispered note was a victory. Each breath was a bridge. These were not lyrics. They were confessions, apologies, forgiveness, and love. When the last whisper faded, Ellie took Emma's hand again and said, just loudly enough to reach the front row, "That was our song." Then they bowed. Together. Applause didn't erupt immediately. It arrived in waves, unsure at first, then rising like thunder, crashing through the room like rain after drought. Some people clapped, others wiped their eyes. A few just stared, stunned at how so little could mean so much. Alana couldn't move at first. She just stood frozen. Hayden turned to her, uncertain. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, tight, raw, real. She pressed her forehead to his shoulder and whispered. "You didn't just make them whisper," she said, voice trembling. "You made me believe again." Hayden stiffened. Then slowly he let his arms wrap around her too. "I didn't do it alone," he murmured. They stood like that for a long moment, surrounded by applause, teachers smiling through tears, and two little girls in matching dresses who had just rewritten the rules of what music could be. As the clapping faded and the next act prepared behind the curtains, Ellie waved at her mom. Alana lifted her fingers in return, then mouthed, "I heard you." Emma giggled, nudging her sister. "Told you it would work." Ellie smiled. It wasn't the song. No, it was the whisper. That night, after the chairs had been stacked and the decorations boxed, Hayden found the girls already asleep in the back seat of the car, leaning against each other, tangled in matching pink jackets. Alana stood beside him under the stars. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think silence meant distance." Hayden looked at her. "Now I think," she continued, "it just needs the right person to hear through it." He didn't say anything, but he reached into his pocket and pulled out the small wind chime, the same one that had started it all. He hung it from the rearview mirror. It tinkled lightly in the night breeze. Alana smiled. "Is that for them?" Hayden nodded. "And for you." She leaned against the car. "You always carry it. Everywhere." They stood there, quiet, the wind playing its quiet tune. No grand declarations, no promises, just presence and belief. The kind that doesn't need volume, the kind that lingers, the kind that changes everything. The sun spilled golden warmth across the park, bathing everything in a soft, forgiving light. The kind of light that made scars look like stories and silence feel like a song. On an old wooden bench under a maple tree, 4 figures sat, or rather, 2 sat, and 2 danced barefoot across the grass. Emma and Ellie twirled in their own rhythm, Ellie's braces clicking lightly with each step, Emma's laugh rising like a bird in flight. The girls chased shadows and made them their own, falling into each other's arms, then rising again with the invincible grace of children who had known pain, but never let it define them. On the bench, Alana Wolf leaned back, her face upturned to the light. For the first time in years, she wore no uniform. No pins, no stripes. Just a soft chambray shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and jeans she'd forgotten she owned. She looked younger, lighter. Beside her sat Hayden Cole. His hands, once calloused and bruised from years of janitorial labor, were cleaner now, but no less strong. He no longer wore the navy overalls that had once made him invisible. These days, he wore whatever he pleased. Because these days, he wasn't trying to disappear. He was just here, present. That was enough. They watched the girls play for a while without speaking, the kind of silence that was no longer uncomfortable, but sacred. Then Alana turned, a small smile curling at the edge of her lips. "So," she asked, voice casual but thick with meaning, "what do we call this now?" Hayden looked at her, took a breath, smiled. "Not a family by rank," he said. "Just a home by choice." Alana didn't reply at first, just reached over and took his hand. He didn't flinch. He didn't freeze. He just held it back. Tightly. Quietly. Completely. Emma called from the field, waving a stick like a conductor's baton. "Mom, Dad, we made a new song." Ellie giggled, cupping her hands over her mouth dramatically. "It's a whisper symphony," Hayden laughed. "Sounds perfect." Alana stood, still holding his hand. "Let's go listen." Later that evening, in the living room of the little house that used to feel too empty, Ellie placed the old wind chime in the center of the dining table. It was worn now, a little bent, but it had never sounded clearer. "This stays," she said with authority. Emma nodded. "It's the beginning of everything." Hayden glanced at Alana. "You okay with that?" Alana touched the chime lightly. It sang a soft, high note. "I am," she said. That night, they didn't sleep in separate homes, not out of necessity, but out of choice. Hayden tucked the girls in. Alana read the bedtime story. They kissed each cheek, one after the other, until Emma rolled her eyes and declared them officially over-kissing. They all laughed. And then the quiet settled in. Not silence, just peace. Weeks later, at the new school semester's start, Hayden took a part-time role teaching woodworking and home repair to students. Not a janitor anymore, but still the man who could fix things, especially broken things that didn't look broken at all. Alana, after a long conversation with herself and her daughters, requested a reassignment to stay closer to home. She still wore the uniform sometimes, but never to the park. Never to the dinner table. Never to hide behind. And never to speak louder than her heart. At the community center, an old piano had been pulled from storage and placed in the sunroom. No one asked why. Some days, Hayden played it. Some days, Alana did. But more often than not, the girls did. Their fingers weren't perfect. Their timing was flawed. But they whispered every note like a promise. People still whispered about them sometimes, about the janitor and the soldier, the twins who once didn't speak, the strange music recital with no sound, but none of that mattered, because those who truly saw them, who truly listened, didn't ask for explanations. They just smiled, and maybe whispered something kind in return. Inspirational message, as narrated. Kindness doesn't need applause, it only needs a place to be seen. Not all wounds need words to heal. Some whispers, when heard with the heart, can change an entire life.